Suddenly, there's not much to like about the White Sox search for a new manager after news dropped over the weekend, unless they somehow hire Will Venable. Let's discuss next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, plenty of news dropped over the weekend on the White Sox manager search that I want to react to in the first segment. And then just when Jon Heyman seemed to have reported the finalists, he threw out another candidate. So I want to discuss who that is in the second segment. And finally, let's go over 5 stats that define this historic 121-loss season. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Excuse me one moment. All right, so the only thing that can salvage the White Sox search for a new manager is if they pull off the impossible and hire Texas Rangers associate manager Will Venable. Otherwise, after the weekend news that dropped, this process has gone from a well-thought-out, timely, and wide-reaching search to possibly being hijacked by shadow GM Tony La Russa and penny-pinching owner Jerry Reinsdorf. And the result could make for a terrible hiring or just going with the backup plan. And this process should not be yielding your next manager who is the ultimate backup plan. So let's go over the timeline of the news dropping, and then I'll give you a reaction to that. So first, late Thursday evening, New York Post and Odyssey Radio baseball insider Jon Heyman reported the Sox had whittled down their managerial search to 3 finalists. He had this on the NewYorkPost.com. He had Venable, former Angels manager Phil Nevin, and Tigers bench coach George Lombard. And he did also say the team considered Buck Showalter. Then the From 108 guys had some news on Twitter on Friday around Nevin possibly being at 35th and Shields, and maybe he was there for a second interview. Maybe the guys were just having a little fun, but either way, it sparked some speculation that maybe he was there for the inevitable, possibly being hired. Thankfully, there was no announcement. Then on Sunday, ESPN's Jesse Rogers threw out that Dodgers first base coach Clayton McAuliffe and Padres special assistant to the GM, A.J. Ellis, were out of the running. Ellis pulled out for what he cited as family reasons, and McAuliffe was just eliminated from consideration. Then 3 hours later, Jon Heyman tweeted out George Lombard was out of the running and that Nevin, Sizemore, and Venable were among the known candidates. Then SoxMachine.com's Josh Nelson tweeted out this nugget at SoxMachine_Josh. Regarding the Chicago White Sox managerial search, word is that Chris Getz is hiring the best possible person for the job, ... at a certain cost. Money seems to be a factor, and boy, financial limitations. This is going to be the theme of the White Sox offseason. And then finally, Heyman added another candidate to the list before also adding at Jon Heyman. This was 6 hours ago. White Sox are taking a hard look at Rangers bench coach Will Venable. No word it's done or close yet, or even that he's certain to accept if offered. He's turned down many previous opportunities. All right, so a lot to unpack here. First, let's get right to the financial limitations. And that's the first sign that this hiring is about to be hijacked by an owner who has always been loathed to pay managers. Remember, the guy let Jeff Torborg just walk out after winning a manager of the year because he didn't want to pay him. Let him just go to the Mets. And at the time, it seemed replaceable because Gene Lamont did take him to the 1993 ALCS. But still, this has been always his MO. Don't pay managers. I mean, even with the Bulls, why do you think the Bulls had so many issues with Phil Jackson? It wasn't, there was butting heads with Jerry Krause, but the biggest thing was they just didn't want to pay Phil Jackson, one of the greatest coaches of all time. So just showing you that, that's how Jerry runs his business. And Tony La Russa totally debunked that Jerry has the team up for sale too. So we're going to get to Tony in a second, but the team just lost 121 games. And Jerry should just be grateful that guys are willing to interview for the job. He should be grateful that candidates are realizing that this is still one of 30 manager jobs and one of only 2 available in this hiring cycle. He should be grateful for that, because a lot of people should be like, I'm not touching that thing with a 10-foot pole. I don't want to come to that dysfunctional franchise. I don't care if there's finally synergy and that they finally rename the analytics department research and development just so Jerry and his shadow GM could feel comfortable with the thought of maybe modernizing their front office. I don't want to deal with that. He should be grateful for that. And if you want to use the cover of going with a youth movement to cut payroll, fine. I have no problem if you want to see if the kids can play. But he keeps blaming everyone but himself for the team's revenue streams issues. And that means if you're not going to act like a big market team and you want to act like a small market team, like the Guardians and the Rays, then be like the Guardians and the Rays and not be cheap in the margins. Okay? The Rays and the Guardians at least know that they can compete in the margins when it comes to treating their employees. And yes, Jerry's very loyal to his employees, but we're talking about making them feel valued. We're talking about paying them. Make sure that you have a great draft and development staff then. That's how the Rays and the Guardians keep staying competitive. And then Phil Nevin, and shout out to Jordan Lazowski of Sox on 35th. He tweeted this out first. No other team wants Phil Nevin. He's out of baseball. Yeah, he did interview for the Padres job, but that's because he's a former Padre. Otherwise, no other team is knocking on his door. The Marlins weren't knocking on the door. The Reds weren't knocking on the door, and he's out of baseball right now. He's shaking Shohei Ohtani's hand because he was invited by Shohei, not because anybody wants him. And everydayers hopefully remember I mentioned his ties to Tony La Russa when they were part of the Diamondbacks organization. So if Nevin's the guy, put me on my jump to conclusions mat here that Tony's behind the scenes calling the shots and he's still in charge and you still have then this shadow GM. And we have to then wonder who's in charge of the franchise again, because that's what sunk the previous rebuild. Was it Kenny? Was it Rick? Was it Jerry? Was it Tony? Was it Herm Schneider? I mean, the Sox are just such a dysfunctional mess. And when they make incremental progress, like again, and I'll have Shane Reardon from 670 on the Score on Wednesday to discuss, they're making updates to the front office, trying to be a modern front office, but then you still have the shadow GM. And I'm not a fan of GM Chris Getz, but if he's supposed to be in charge, then he should be the one fully in charge. There should be no shadow GM behind the scenes. Tony, if you want him to be a special advisor and watch a few prospects here and there, fine, but he cannot be in this room anymore. If it was Skip, the only exception would be if they wanted Skip Schumacher, and with no news around Skip Schumacher, it sounds like he wants nothing to do with this organization. It sounds like he's probably going to sit out this hiring cycle. And yes, I know I'm on the jump to conclusions mat there, but you just hear nothing about it. But that's the only time I want Tony involved. Otherwise, he needs to go away. And Nevin only checks 3 boxes for me. And one of them isn't very good because he wasn't successful at it. But he's a former player. He did navigate a dysfunctional franchise, and he has experience at managing a club. But again, 2 of those 3, actually, he wasn't very good at. The reports I got out of LA from Locked On Angels guys were saying Nevin was not good. That's why I'm against it. And it's also, I'm against it because it would be a Tony hire. And Tony shouldn't be in charge of baseball because nothing but bad has happened since he's been around. And like it or not, Chris Getz is someone we have to trust to do this monumental rebuild, but he should at least be afforded to see if he's even up to the task, because he has at least shown that little glimmer, tiny glimmers that he could do it. I doubt it. And 2 things can be true at the same time. There could be a little bit of potential, but a lot of doubt. And the financial limitations and the Tony presence has always made me think Will Venable coming to the White Sox is going to be impossible. But if the impossible happens, then everything seems good again. Suddenly, you can actually trust the White Sox to do something good, because Will Venable is an attractive candidate that can provide some hope. I mean, look at his background. Worked for Theo Epstein with the Cubs in his first post-playing career job. Then he was the first base coach and then the third base coach under Joe Madden. Then he was the bench coach for Alex Cora in Boston, and then the associate coach for Bruce Bochy with the Rangers while winning a World Series last year. And now I don't know if having a World Series ring is going to bring a bunch of cachet to a rock bottom franchise, but it certainly can help. Certainly can help to bring in a guy that says, hey, we're going to do things this way. And because if we do it, you get one of these, and then holds up the ring. And think about it. He studied under 3 great managers and one of the best baseball executives of all time. And he's a former player. He can come with that background of saying, I've been there. I know what it's like. So sign me up. However, he's the heir apparent in Texas. So you're going to need to pony up some money to probably get him out of there. Because he's already turned down the Mets and the Guardians last year. Much better, well-run franchises. Much better attractive jobs. And he said, nope, I'm happy here. So, and he must be interested because he interviewed for the job. If I recall, I don't think he interviewed at least for the Mets job. And he's turned down other jobs. Again, circling back, though, to Ellis, pulling out for family reasons. Okay, that's legit because you're going to be like, oh, see, no, nobody wants to deal with the White Sox. He did pull out for family reasons. He didn't go, nope, I want nothing to do with this thing. And Clayton McAuliffe being eliminated, I'm fine with. Although I guess a certain local reporter was way off. I mean, I wonder if that source who told 670 The Score's Bruce Levine that candidates shouldn't even bother to interview was someone very close to McAuliffe. And I'm not bashing Bruce here. I just hope he wasn't being used to prop up a first base coach, even if he was from the Dodgers. You know, just to first report it and then double down and all that stuff. And now he's not even in contention. Makes you think it wasn't Clayton McAuliffe that was the Sox target to begin with, and maybe somebody was just floating on his name. Lombard being eliminated from the process, I wonder if it did come down to the right price. Again, on the jump to conclusions, Matt. You know, he goes from being a reported finalist by Heyman on Thursday to 2 days later being out. And then you got Josh Nelson talking about, the financial limitations. So I wonder if Lombard was like, yeah, I'm not doing this for what you're offering. Or maybe he was like, again, I don't want to touch this team with a 10-foot pole after doing some reflection. Who knows? Or maybe he's like, you know what? I'll take the Marlins job because he's in the mix there. But 121 losses, you can't say you're coming here on our price. You just can't. It's, again, the arrogance of the White Sox. You know, they are just such an arrogant organization on 35th and Shields. And I don't know if that comes from Jerry. I don't know if that comes from Tony. But they're just so arrogant. You can't say, we want you to manage our team, Will Venables or George Lombard. Save us, please. Help us. You know, Chris Getz, be my partner, but it's got to be at this price. No, you're rock bottom. You are literally, you're beyond rock bottom. You're 50 feet of crap. And then there's you. You are now the Oakland A's. Well, the former Oakland A's in that, in the Moneyball, description of when, the scene where Billy Bean, Brad Pitt playing Billy Bean saying, there's rich teams, there's poor teams, and then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. That's now the White Sox. And then when it comes to Grady Sizemore, this is not the time to be settling and going with your backup plan. You want to go cheap on your outfield or your second base right now for the next 2 years, fine, because, again, this team's probably not going to be competitive until 2027. That's why I'm not like, oh, my God, the team's not spending money. Yes, it's frustrating, but they're not going to be competitive until 2027. So if you want to give some runway to Brian Ramos, to Edgar Caro, to Colson Montgomery, fine. They come with cheap prices. But Sizemore, hiring him, you should be, again, trying to find your guy that gets you through this period, 2025, 2026, and then to 2027, and also be the manager that gets you to the title, whether it's an AL Central, ALCS, or World Series by 2027, 2028, and 2029. The whole way through. Well, Sizemore could be and the other reason if Sizemore gets the job, it might just sound like they couldn't get anybody else to take this job. Although I would probably take if that's not an option. Do I take Nevin or Sizemore? Might as well take Sizemore. At least he's younger. Again, this could all go from to yay if they hire Will Venable. Although Heyman threw out Guardians bench coach Craig Albernez as someone the Sox are interested a day after him reporting the team is down to 3 finalists. So maybe the search is not close to being narrowed down. Let's discuss Albernez's credentials and if he would be a good hire next on Locked On White Sox. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you could still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when your picks hit, you can get your money in as quickly as 15 minutes. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Indiana. And my buddy on the text chain who lives behind the cheddar curtain always tells me how much he loves using Prize Picks to get his selections in. I love it because it's simple and fun to play. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so Garrett Crochet hinted at the end of the season that the Sox were built sort of to be like the Guardians, and they're not suited to play that kind of baseball with the players they had. So if the Sox want to replicate the Guardians, and they actually should, why not hire someone from the Guardians to be their next manager? And also, why not hire a guy who's worked for the Rays and the Giants as he diversified his background? And Heyman tweeted this out, at John Heyman. Craig Albernez is a hot managerial candidate. White Sox and Marlins have interest. This one could get down to a bidding war if the Sox decide he is the guy, as it sounds like the Marlins like him too. All right, so therefore, and going back to that, and it sounds like, and he didn't say it was a bidding war. That's my opinion. Sorry, I was reading my notes here. It does sound like it's going to get down to a bidding war, and the Marlins love him, and therefore I'm not going to get my hopes up because the Sox never win a bidding war, and it sounds like Jerry's putting restrictions on the cost of paying the Sox next manager. And the Marlins' interest is simple, as Albernez was the bullpen catcher's coach for Gabe Kapler in San Francisco. Kapler is now in the front office at Miami, and Albernez also overlapped with Marlins head of baseball operations Peter Bendix in Tampa when he was with the Rays as a minor league coach and minor league field coordinator. He then joined Vogt's staff this season, as both were Rays minor league system. They were both in the Rays minor league system coming up as players. Vogt made it to the show. Albernez did not. So not being a big league player is a concern. He's also a former catcher not making it to the show. Also a concern is that was Pedro Grifol's past. However, diversified background and being in the Rays organization wipes away that concern for me. Working with prospects also wipes away that concern for me. Working with Stephen Vogt, who proved to be a plus WAR manager, also wipes out that concern for me. And finally, hiring someone away from the Guardians instead of the Royals, a franchise that the Sox should actually replicate because they have all this great young pitching, just like the Guardians usually do, is a great idea. And Albernez did overlap with the Sox pitching guru Brian Bannister with their time in San Francisco, so that there's the tie. And he's worked with bullpens, and the Sox could use help there. And he was supposed to be the Guardians field coordinator, and then when Vogt got the job, gave him a promotion to bench coach because they're really tight, like almost brothers. The Guardians also did interview Albernez for their opening last year before giving it to Vogt, so they thought of him as a managerial candidate. So it's not like this guy's coming out of the blue. And his role, according to what he told the Herald News last year, is Vogt, Albernez says, wants him as a sounding board to bounce off ideas, as a suggestion maker, as a helper in dealing with the front office, the media, agents, and more. And then Vogt and Albernez are tight as this is a nugget I wanted to share out of The Athletic by Zach Meisel. He wrote this earlier this month. In the dugout, Vogt and Albernez carry on conversations resembling the ones they had as players in the Rays farm system when they devised plans to help teammates improve, and they fantasize about what buttons they would push if they were the manager. Albernez spends his afternoons thinking up every possible scenario that might arise during a game so Vogt isn't caught unprepared. Vogt dubbed him, quote, the hardest working person in baseball, an energizer bunny who stays up all hours of the night diving into one small thing if it can help one of our players get just a tick better, end quote. And then, quote, yes, he's the manager, I'm the bench coach, Albernez said, but also that's my good friend. I want to make sure he's in the best spot to succeed, end quote. They'll exchange ideas and counter proposals throughout the 9 innings with intensity of a conversation often matching the heated dialogue they broadcast at Mastro Steakhouse. Quote, Albie will bring up something and Vogt's like, that's dumb, Fry said. Vogt will bring up something and Albie will be like, well, that's dumb, end quote. Ultimately, the decision lands with Vogt. The process has worked wonders in year one as the Guardians embark on a postseason run. So you can see this is a guy that's actually interested in making people better, detailed, too. That's another thing that just wipes away those concerns of former minor league catcher who never made it to the show from a division rival. You know, and trust me, yes, Grafal did scar me for life when it comes to those types of candidates. But you look at it, worked for the Giants. He worked with their catchers. Corey Lee could use some of that guidance, and Edgar Carroll eventually. He did work at prepping the bullpen. Again, the Sox could use that. And he was the team's pitch com voice. And you got to like his background. But the Herald reported that I quoted a little bit, piece of information that Albernez is loyal to Kapler too. So it could come down to, if it comes down to the Marlins and the Sox better pony up some cash if they want him, because he's got loyalty to Gabe Kapler. And that's the only way you're probably going to, loyalty has a cost too. And it sounds like the Sox are not even going to be, they want their guy at their price, which again should not be the case. If Will Venable wants to come or if Albernez wants to come, you should be like, what's it going to take? And if they say $5 million, pay him $5 million. I don't care if they don't have managerial experience. They provide something called modern thinking, hope, details, basically what you're looking for in a clubhouse skipper that you need. But whoever the Sox hire or lazily take off an interim tag, they're going to help them get better numbers from these 5 areas that help the Sox crash to an historic 121 loss season that I want to discuss next on Locked On White Sox. Hey, get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sports book, FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And as I always tell anyone who asks me about FanDuel, the traditional spreads, over-unders, and money lines, they're fun to play. But FanDuel's futures, parlays, and props gives you a chance to win big or at least double your money. They got a popular parlay going at plus 23.77 of George Pickens, Najee Harris, and Malik Neighbors anytime touchdown, and Pittsburgh on the money line in tonight's New York and Steel City matchup. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all my everydayers. Appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. And I hope you had a good weekend. Mine was all right. Took my daughter trick-or-treating twice. She got to go trick-or-treating with a friend in her friend's neighborhood on Saturday night, and then my in-laws, I don't live too far away from them, they had their trick-or-treating on Sunday, and then we're going to go again actually on Halloween in my neighborhood because that's when they do it. I don't mind the Halloween night if it's like on a weekend, but usually weekend trick-or-treating is the best. I love the people that don't give out candy. Why? There's nothing wrong with it. Buy a bag of candy. I know prices are up, but still, enjoy the kids. It's fun. Give out some candy. Although I'm really taking the dad tax to an extreme, and having a big bag of candy is probably not good for my health there. So, I'm a big Kit Kat fan, Reese's, also a big Crunch Bar fan. Those are like my top three there. And Hershey bars, you can't go wrong with those. All right, there are 5 stats that I want to go over that I really feel defines why the White Sox lost 121 games this season. The first is the team's .618 OPS. Dead last in the league by 51 points, as the Rays were the next closest. You cannot expect to produce much offense if a lineup cannot provide any quality, when it comes to especially getting on base and driving the ball. 618, that's like basically, think about it, if you divide that in half, that's 309. That's not good enough. That's not even close to good enough. That's 300. That's like acceptable, and that's for slugging, a decent slugging percentage. League average is like 400. A team 75 WRC plus shows you how little value this lineup had. And a 6.3 F4 total for the entire lineup shows that the Sox were actually rolling on a lineup that was taking 6 wins off their total. Think about that. In terms of your margins, when you lose 121 games, if you've got a -6.3 F4 lineup, yeah, you're going to lose 121 games. And speaking of wins off the board, 56 blown leads, just 12 comeback victories. You had to go to the last week of the season for the Sox to finally win a game after trailing in the 7th inning. That's terrible. And again, you maintain a few of those leads or even have a few extra comebacks, you're not the worst baseball team of all time in context. And then -87 defensive runs saved, ranked the Sox dead last in that area. And why is that a big deal? Because a lot of the offseason last year was concentrated on improving the defense. And the defense was still actually got worse from 2023. In 2023, they were a -56 DRS. They thought getting rid of Tim Anderson, and it looks like Tim Anderson's done, but still, Tim Anderson for Paul DeJong, that's going to make the defense better. No, it didn't. In fact, the defense got even worse with Paul DeJong in the lineup. I mean, it just shows you how spectacularly failed in terms of constructing the roster that this team had in the offseason. They thought that they were going to get better defensively and do all this run prevention. And again, they got even worse. No wonder why you lost 121 games. So you look at those specific numbers, and you have to be like, yep, that's why this team was one of the worst, is the worst team of all time in the contextual sense. All right, well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the World Series. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll be back tomorrow, and let's keep rolling through the 63 players who suited up for the Sox and discuss the young pitchers you and I should be excited about. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the recent news around the managerial search and how it went from being a great process to an awful process, and it could still be saved if Will Venable is named the manager. I also discussed the recent new name added to the White Sox managerial candidate list, and then went over 5 stats that really define this 121 loss season. You can leave those comments at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. I do reply as long as we don't get awkward with each other. Would love to talk baseball with you. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.